More space for everybody, but we're so glad to see you and thank you all. And I know I do these events several times a week, not this big of course, but I want to let you know that whenever I have a sci-fi or fantasy event, I know that it's just going to be awesome because the fans know how to do an event and they know how to be respectful of their authors. So I'm going to run through a few housekeeping things, and I know that you'll all pay a lot of attention to them. We started giving out numbers at 9 o'clock this morning. If you have a number, that is your place in line. When it comes time for the signing, we will call you up in groups of 30. You probably can't see it right now, but we have marked out in silver tape on the floor the lineup area. When it comes time for the signing, those of you who are standing there are going to need to move out so that we can line up and our booksellers can take names and get personalizations and that sort of a thing easily. Also, so that the fire marshal doesn't come in and shut us down. So, you're welcome to be wherever you can find a spot to see and hear for right now, but please, when it comes time for the signing, move on out. We will call up in groups of 30. We'll call it from this microphone and this podium. We'll also call it overhead on the speakers. So anywhere in the store, you should be able to hear your group being called. If for some reason you are number 60 and you missed group 60 through 90 and now we're at 120, just come on in. Don't worry about it. We'll fit you in where you fit, so long as you're that number or in advance. For personalization, when you are lined up, a Barnes & Noble employee will come along. They will take your book from you. They will ask you how to spell your name, and they'll give it back to you. They're going to ask you how to spell your name, even if it's Bob. And the reason is because there are about a zillion ways to spell every single name out there, and we don't want to mess things up on your book. So please give them the book. We'll flap it to the title page, which is the first page that has both the author's name and the name of the book on it. And as you can see, sometimes it takes a bit of time to find that page. And this is why they're going to do it. And they're going to stick the Post-it note on the flap so that it stays flapped like this. This way, when you get to the author, your book will open right to that event.
Please come to this, and you don't have your book yet, please come to the Snelling side of our store to pick one up. Thank you very much.
Okay. So they'll stick the Post-it note on there and then give it right back to you. But it's the title page, the first page that has both the title of the book and the author's name on it. To accommodate as many people for signing tonight as possible, there is a 3-book limit. Harriet has graciously agreed that she will sign any book that she has edited. Brandon will sign any book that he has written. So you may have more than 3 books in line with you, but please do not embarrass yourself by trying to slip that 4th book in front of one of the authors. I'm going to be right here, and I can be quite the dragon. I will take it away from you, and you may get it back in March. Photographs are allowed. Our memory keepers will be our photographers, so when you get up to this point in line, you're going to hand your phone or your camera to the memory keeper, and there's a little X right beside the author where you're going to squat down, and while the author is signing your book, the memory keeper will snap the picture for you. If you want a photograph with each of the authors, just repeat the process at the next author's desk. It's okay to take photographs during the presentation, but please try to be respectful of those people who are around you, and just a couple of quick snaps and then sit back down or stand back down as the case may be. If you have not already done so, you may want to turn your cell phones off or set it to silent. And finally, a warning to anybody who called in sick to work so that they could be here tonight. Is there anybody like that here? We are videotaping it, and it is going to go on the internet. So you may want to think twice in case your boss is also a Wheel of Time fan.
They'd understand.
I don't know. I'm a Wheel of Time fan, but if any of my booksellers hadn't shown up tonight, I'd have a pretty tough time with it. What we'll do, this is the front of the line right here where Molly is, and we'll line up and go back around that way. All right. Harriet McDougall is the widow of Robert Jordan and the editor of the Wheel of Time series. For those of you who may not know, and I don't know if there's anybody here who doesn't already know this, she was an editor before he was an author, and they met while she was editing his books. While the position of editor may not get much attention from the fans, for the authors, it is huge. I rarely hear anything but praise from authors for their editors. And the really good authors praise their editors even more because they know that having a great editor is what makes them a great author. It is an essential component to the development of the published book. So we are absolutely so thrilled to have Harriet McDougall with us tonight. Please join me in giving her a welcome.
Round the hill, through the hill, airborne. You all have done all these things to be here tonight. Thank you so much for coming, for turning out. I think, is this on?
It's pretty weak. You may have to hold it pretty close.
Is that better?
No.
Better? Yes. Okay, thank you. Brandon's plane may be a little late. And besides, I was getting bored looking at all these books that I didn't have room for in my suitcase, which is very tempting on these trips. So I thought I'd turn out and offer you a choice. I could either do a very brief reading for you, or we could do some Q&A until Brandon turns up. Can I have hands? Who wants a reading? Looks like I don't think it's a majority. How about who wants Q&A? That wins.
Did they vote twice?
Okay. You seem to be seething with impatience. Okay, who's going first? Actually, I need a keeper.
I got you.
Well, I mean, I do need a keeper.
Can you guys hear me okay through that?
Yes.
How about now?
No?
We want
No.
Maybe we could have the question asker come up.
Yeah, we only have one mic, so could the question asker come up? For a minute, I thought that was a holster.
What I said was speech, but I don't know, maybe I'm a little behind the times here, but what I was wondering is...
You gotta hold the mic up to your mouth. No, please.
From what I was wondering, from what I've read and everything else like that, you guys have had the ability or had the opportunity to sell the books in movie format. Is there going to be a movie coming out in these series? Are we going to actually see these things come to life?
Did everybody hear the question?
Yes.
The series is in development at Universal. It has been in development at Universal for 5 years. So I don't know anything about exactly what progress is being made. Okay? If you come up, then everybody can hear your question.
Hi, Harriet.
Actually, I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you. I've been reading these books for 20 years. I started at the very beginning, and I wanted to thank you for all of the work that you've put into guiding them and crafting the story and allowing it to grow from what it has. And I'm extremely pleased with how it all ended, so thank you very much.
Oh, that could have started something.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I watched the video and Brandon, he was, that course and you guys are putting out, and one of the things that Brandon said was he came in and he read all the notes. Is there any plan to publish the notes or do anything with the notes? Sorry if this question's been asked before, but I didn't know.
No, there's no need to apologize. The fact is, Robert Jordan left as many pages of notes as have been published in the entire series. And there are no plans to publish this gargantuan set of notes. There will, however, be an encyclopedia of the Wheel of Time, which I have been working on with Maria Simmons and Alan Romanchuk for many books. I started keeping what we call in the house the raw glossary back in the Eye. And of course, now that there are more than 2,000 named characters, it's an enormous piece of work. There are plans to publish that, but it will take us a year from now, if not more, to polish it up enough for to get it ready to begin the publication process. Well, you could just shout. It's hard.
No, I could do that too.
Okay,
I'll just have a loud voice. Since we're talking about publishing things, have you considered I know it's been asked before, but I'm going to ask you in person about some of the other prequels, the other 2 prequels that have been talked about. Are there any discussions or?
They won't happen.
They will not. Okay.
That's a definite no.
Okay.
Yes, with the green. Oh, I can show
We're all finding a term guide on. They can use all the green systems.
Absolutely.
Well, my question is, you've been heavily involved, and as many authors have had help, many men who have been authors have had help in their lives. You've been as editor as well as a support in the past. And my question is, what do you think of as your greatest contribution to the story? Like this one scene that if it hadn't been for your input, your insights, no, Robert, you should definitely have this happen. You should definitely do this and forget about that. What, as part of your memories, is your greatest moment with that?
Well, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you.
I have sort of a related question to that. In bringing in Brandon Sanderson, who I really appreciate, and I've taken to read his other stuff, what's been the easiest part and the hardest part about transitioning from Robert, The Knife of Dreams to the 3-part ending series of books?
The hardest part was that it wasn't my husband. And we began work about Christmas after his death in October, and that was very hard. It's gotten easier as time has gone on, and Brandon is a terrific guy to work with, which makes it, that makes it good. He has done stuff that's just dynamite, particularly in this book, I think you'll see. And while we're talking about Brandon and my working together, this lady in the t-shirt over here is Elise Matheson, who lives in Minneapolis, and she is responsible for my ever first hearing the name of Brandon Sanderson. She's the godmother of the last 3 books. Yeah.
feel knowing that this section of your life is over, when the books are now mostly done other than the encyclopedia?
That's a very good question, and the answer is that I don't know. I was talking to a cousin at Thanksgiving, and he said, "What comes next?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to try and retire." I actually bought an embroidery kit. Well, that's what he did. So I guess it looks pretty funny. Yes?
I was just wondering, are there plans to release the audio tape that Mr. Jordan has created of the final scene?
Nobody, well, of course the audio tape of the last book is already out, or at least I've gotten my copies. And the final scene, but not in his voice. That's what you mean,
yeah,
his dictation. Well, as we learned to say in tour school, that's a very good question. Thanks, I'll think about it. And here's the poor man who is a fan of the Fighting Irish.
Yeah.
Thank you for your sympathy. This might be kind of a dangerous question, but having read so many interviews where your husband always said that there was a little bit of you in every character, I'm wondering which character you consider to be more of you than the rest.
I never thought of that. I said, Moghedian. Yes, Harriet, when you say you forgot to take out the garbage. But in the say, what he said was all the women had bits of me, and I think all the men have bits of him. He would come in the house for dinner, having been writing all day, as was his wont, and he'd come in the back door, and if he would close it like this and slink across the wall and say, "You've been writing Pad and Bane, haven't you?" And he'd say, "How did you know?"
Just a continuation of that, I wanted to say, I think for everybody here, thank you very much. We all just really appreciate it. And I wanted to ask who your favorite character is. Of all the women that you are a piece of, who is your favorite?
That's a very good question. I like them all. I have a real sneaker for Baron because I love her owl. I'm pretty much a brown, except that I'm also a blue. It's very difficult for me to choose these things. I'm afraid I'm a lot like Nynaeve. I kept telling people how to make themselves better by drinking this or that sort of tea. But I only realized a few years ago, oh my God, that's where he got that.
See, us Canadians do the same thing, only we use beer.
Did y'all hear that? Yes, Canadians, he says, do the same thing, only they use beer. Which is a sovereign remedy.
So, as you mentioned earlier, you're done after this, or are you going to continue editing it all, or is this the end?
Well, this is the end of the Robert Jordan material, except for the encyclopedia. My husband often expressed himself as full of horror for sharecropping in other people's universes. And he said he would take his hard disks and roll over them 5 times in a Mack truck just to be sure nobody could do it. But he did make it clear to me and the rest of us who were working there that he very much wanted the series finished. Otherwise, he wouldn't have begun dictating and then continued to clarify and make clear what he wanted and give us the last scene and so on. But he really didn't want people crashing around with an infinite number of books. And even the, what are called the outrigger novels, that sounded wonderful, but he only left 2 sentences. It would not have been, well, that would have been going to Shan Chan. And of course there's all the backstory in the books about Shan Chan, but it still wouldn't have been his. And believe me, the publisher of Tor Books was very determined to talk me into doing this. But I really felt it was not a thing to do for Robert Jordan. I thought he'd come get me. Yes.
This isn't really, it's kind of Wheel of Time related. It's more related to Robert Jordan.
I was just going to ask, I know that you said that this book, except for the encyclopedia, was going to be the end of Wheel of Time. I was wondering, is there anything else out there floating around that he had that he never published, like another Conan book or maybe another manuscript somewhere that we might see at some point?
Well, I'll tell you about one thing that's out there, but it's not going to get published because it's so rough. But it was a Western, and he wrote it many years ago. It's called Morgan, and it begins, I never meant to leave Texas, and I never meant to be a known man, neither. And I love the voice, but it would have needed, it would need a total rewrite, and he isn't here to do it. And one year he said, oh, I think I'll do that, and I could see the next Wheel of Time vanishing over the mist. I said, don't you dare! Tom Doherty, the publisher of Tor, will come and kill us. So really there isn't anything else. I've just given his papers to the College of Charleston, and they will be in the special collections of the Addlestone Library, and they're thrilled to get them. They said it will be a new group of researchers who aren't interested in the American Civil War. But there's one thing in there that I plan to go read. It is an early draft of The Eye of the World, which I had never seen before. And in the first page of this, I think it is, it's not the first page of the book, he had written, I think it's Mikhail Fame, and with his pencil in his handwriting, he crossed it out and wrote Padma. His name is Padma, I think. So he was really doing a lot of work before I ever saw it. And I wanted to see what he was doing, which I will do. And I have time. There's a red arm back there.
A question about Brandon.
Doesn't that ring a bell?
Yeah. Were you aware that Brandon was a guest of honor at a convention in Minnesota?
Thank you.
Were you aware that Brandon was a guest of honor at a convention here in Minnesota a couple of years ago?
No, I probably should have been.
He was a guest of honor at MiniCon a year or two ago, and he will be again in a year. He participated in a Magic the Gathering tournament and lost to one young man. It gets better. My youngest brother, whose name is Rand, was the only person to beat Brandon Sanderson in the game of Magic.
We were once in Billings, Montana, where he was, for a change, he was there as my humble spouse. I was attending a convention of the Western Writers of America, and he had a bunch of cousins with him, and they went fishing in the day, and then I would go with them into a restaurant, with my own posse. But we were walking down the street, and here is Rand's custom hatter. So, and he got a wonderful hat.
Yes. Yeah, can you tell us anything more about the character, the main character that was removed from The Eye of the World?
Well, yeah. I said, this guy doesn't have anything to do. And he never says anything. And my husband said, well, he will in book 4. And I said, I said, honey, if you've got a character who bores them to death, there won't be a book 4. He said, okay. And then later he said, I'm embarrassed at how easy it was to unzip it. Yes.
I wanted to say thank you also, and Tyshar Charleston. And I was reading bits and pieces about the Wit of the Staircase documentary. I mean, what is that, and will it ever be available to others?
I think it probably will. In the last summer of Robert Jordan's life, a young man named Hunter Wentworth came to interview him. Hunter had just graduated from the Savannah College of Art and Design and is the son of South Carolina's poet laureate Marjorie Wentworth. His father is Peter Wentworth, who made a marvelous movie years ago called Metropolitan. Anyway, Hunter came, and it really gave my husband, he was a bit of a ham. Well, I've always thought Tom Maryland had a lot of him in him. But he was energized, and Hunter got about 2 hours of film. And he's been working on editing this and working with it. And maybe it'll come into shape. He will be at the signing in Charleston on Saturday of this week, taking film. And there's a display on Robert Jordan at the Citadel, and he was there at the dedication of the display. So he's adding to the material. And what will happen and when, I can't tell you, except that Hunter has been working on Honey Boo Boo. Oh, hey, he's a working step.
It's been kind of evolving, and people asking questions about characters representing you and whatnot, and so I had to rethink my question. But I guess, is there a trait that, whether it be tugging on a braid or something, that every time you hear, you smile to yourself and know, and that from here on out, when I read it, I'll say, ah.
No, there really isn't. Somebody asked me the other day, was Robert Jordan more like Rand or more like Matt? And I said, well, I always thought he was more like Perrin. But Maria Simmons, who worked with him and works with me now, she's been with us for 17 years, she said, he's got a lot of Matt in him. And anybody who quits his job as a civilian nuclear engineer for the Navy in order to come away and be a freelance writer, well, you know he's a gambler. Yes, another red arm.
Hi. My question is more about publishing. From an editorial standpoint, what's your process as far as going into a book that's just so huge and has so many notes behind it? Like, how do you break it down? Is it like a chapter to chapter, or are you given the whole thing at the end? And just can you tell us a little bit about your process?
Well, when it's huge, it's tough. The hardest part of it is keeping the whole thing in your mind. Where, how does this tie into the overall structure? And early on in the series, early on in the series, I said, well, I think this bit could go, honey. And he said, no, I'm using that in book 5. So after a while, I stopped suggesting cuts. I've never had quite that experience, that it was so very tightly planned in his mind. So that is tough, and you just do it. I did, as time went on, by the time he wrote book 11,